January 26th, 2026. We are recording our daily newscast today, which you can get at your favorite podcast location: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Substack, YouTube, all of those places. We are also broadcasting live on Substack, TikTok. We are broadcasting live on Spotify Live and on Twitch as well as YouTube. I told you we would be moving ahead forward, and that's the first thing I want to talk about today. Looks like I gotta work on my notifications. I got my tie on today because it is the first broadcast from the occupied state of TikTok. TikTok fully occupied by the billionaires now. I mean, it was always occupied by billionaires, just billionaires who had less interest in suppressing the truth because, yeah, that's how propaganda works. Anyways, I have grave concerns about social media in the United States of America. I'm very glad that we've been able to extend and expand our reach to YouTube, Twitch, the Spotify platform. But I have to be honest with you. I see social media and really all forms of connected media really quickly coalescing, tightening, and making it harder for us to see what's happening, for us to know the truth. And we have to continue to expand our reach, our outreach. But most importantly, you need to find offline connections so that you understand what you're going to do as this continues to get worse. This weekend was a weekend of American horror in the United States of America. But we're still here today, January 26th. Let's start off on a little bit of a lighter note today. Welcome everyone for joining us. It's great to have you. This is your quick reminder because if you're using TikTok today, you've got to surely know that something is very different. So do consider following us on one of our other platforms. We've got Substack, we've got YouTube, Twitch, and of course, Spotify. Let's do a little lightening the mood today. Let me give you a couple things that happened on today. This is going to date me. Who remembers the Lotus 123? Or I guess the program. Remember spreadsheets on Lotus? I remember I was going to my Aunt Becky's house. She had this old computer that didn't even have a color screen. And she was like, well, we have Lotus. Like it was a game I could play on her computer. Plugged in the disc. Sure enough, Lotus 123. The screen wasn't even green and black. Does anyone remember this? The screen was orange and black. Does anyone remember the orange and black monochrome screens on old computers? In 1983, on this date, they released Lotus 123. The first, quote, killer app was Lotus, a spreadsheet application. On this day in 1925, Paul Newman was born. So was Eddie Van Halen. Wayne Gretzky was also born today, and Ellen DeGeneres, all born on this day. Happy birthday to all of them. And let's see, what else? What do we got? Today is National Spouses Day. Happy National Spouses Day to Moderator Cat. International Customs Day. So that's the day that recognizes, events of significance. On this day, the hole in the wall was discovered. What is that? The world's largest diamond. The Cullinan was discovered on January 26, 1905. And in 1988, 5 years after the debut of Lotus 123, there were some people typing away on their monochrome computer in Broadway, New York, counting ticket sales for what Broadway show debuted today. Anyone want to guess? If you said Phantom of the Opera, you're correct. Welcome to the Ignition News. That's what we're going to get started off with today. We've got 5 stories for today to talk about what's happening in the country right now. And then we're going to wrap it all up, of course, telling you what is significant about that. I do want to just point out how I'm very disturbed at what's going on with TikTok. It's very disturbing. Almost every large creator that I know is also experiencing this. Something is going on beyond just a technical glitch. And if it is a technical glitch, by the way, what does that say about the capacity, the reach, and the power of the American technological infrastructure? What does it say about our billionaires who claim to be these tech titans, the titans of the world? Moving and purchasing an app like this has been a conversation that's been in progress for over a year. Well over a year. They buy this app knowing they were going to buy the app for months. And then they have this technical rollout, this transition. Number one, rolling out terms of service that look like something out of Russia from 1983 that someone typed up in Lotus 123. Or So it's either a terrible technical failure by these incompetent billionaires. Billionaires don't create anything. They wreck everything and they steal everything. Or or it is the rollout of what everyone fears, which is this surveillance apparatus and platform. We're going to stay on TikTok for one simple reason. My FBI agent knows what I'm doing all the time anyway. And number two, we have to be able to reach people wherever they are, especially people who don't realize what is happening, what's going on in this country. So we're going to stay on TikTok. If you decide that you don't want to stay on TikTok, I understand. That's why you got to go find us elsewhere. I'm yapping, but let me just continue. Speaking of TikTok, I posted something yesterday that you probably didn't see, but I want to talk about the phony war. That's where we're going to start the story out today. In 1939, in Paris, France, as the Germans were advancing on Paris and on really most of Europe, in Paris, France, if you were to go out to an average cafe or if you were to go to a nightclub at night, you would never have imagined that war was ravaging the continent and that miles away from the city of Paris, the world was ending. That is because the citizens of Paris were lulled into a state of complacency, complete denial, sustained connective denial. In fact, I was talking about this yesterday. There was a columnist who had visited Paris leading up to the Nazi invasion of Paris, and she was famously quoted as saying, "It's as though they could have consumed their fear. They ate as though they could consume their fear." There we go. I got it right. And of course, she was talking about the fact that even though war was literally advancing towards Paris, and the Germans would eventually occupy and destroy large portions of Paris in their attempt to take it over, which they eventually did. If you were to go to a nightclub on Friday night in Paris, you would have had no idea. And it didn't just end there, by the way. As the citizens of Paris, many of whom were fleeing the city after the Nazis occupied the country, people were very, very famously known to have been discussing when and where they would eat on their way out of Paris, what cities they would stop at, and what lunch diners they would go to. Such was the state of collective denial in Paris as war ravaged the country. Spring was breaking in the city. Women were wearing their spring dresses, men dressing their finest, having coffee at the cafe, a baguette, if you will. Miles away, the world was ending. And this is where we start the show today. America, occupied America, January 26th, 2026. We are in our own state of collective denial. And I know that not just because of what is happening with these apps, what is happening with our ability to connect and see each other, but I know because I've seen it with my own eyes. I too went out on Saturday night. I had to go work. It was unavoidable. I spent most of the day on Saturday, the day of Alex Pretty's death, like most of you, shocked, appalled, watching videos, hearing the screams of that woman in the red coat, and realizing that this country has descended into something very dark. But then I went out into the city, the town, and everywhere I went, it was spring. Miles away, the world was ending. Pizza places, restaurants, clubs, people looking at each other, laughing, somehow denying that this chaos had reached our shores. It was shocking, appalling, but all too understandable. And when I finally called this out, I have to say that I did post about this, and people were angry with me for calling this out. I generally don't get angry vitriol in terms of response to content I create. I've curated my audience very, very well. But people who I've known for a long time were very angry with me. They were saying things like, "What do you expect us to do? We should be able to have some joy in our lives. We should be able to go have dinner with our families." And what I would say to you is, of course you are entitled to joy. Of course you are entitled to try to find some small of happiness, some small sliver of hope in this very dark time. In fact, I tell you all the time that you should do that. But you must also know that is not what I'm talking about. You know that, don't you? It's not you dining with your friends and family, nervously laughing over a pizza while you know that the world is on fire around you. It is those members of your community, those neighbors who, like the citizens of Paris in 1939, were dancing away at the club, pretending that the world wasn't ending. You see, you know that. You understand how serious Saturday was. You take it seriously. But we also have to confront the crisis of apathy in this country. Because, as with all things, when the fascist finally reaches your door, when the boot finally reaches your neck, then it's too late. They called it the phony war in Paris. That's what they called it. If I knew the way to say it in French, I would say it, but I don't. Maybe someone can let me know. But in 1939, they called it the phony war. By the end of 1940, Paris was occupied. The city was never the same, really. We face the same crisis in America. Let me tell you why. Let's get into our top stories. If you're just new to following us on TikTok, please go ahead and follow us there, but don't forget to follow us on our other platforms. Obviously, today is a very different day. Obviously, our top story continues to be the main story in the country right now, which is that on January 24th at 9:05 a.m., a 37-year-old ICU nurse named Alex Preddy was shot, I would say executed, by Border Patrol agents in the streets of Minneapolis. This was not a shootout. This was not an armed confrontation. This was an execution on an American street. Most of you, of course, now know that Alex Preddy was an intensive care nurse working for the Department of Veterans Affairs. He was a legal gun owner with a valid permit to carry concealed. On Saturday morning, he was in the Whittier neighborhood of Minneapolis, documenting federal immigration enforcement operations along with two legal observers. Of course, you know what happens then. He is shoved by a federal agent. He attempts to assist a woman who has been tackled to the ground. After being pepper sprayed, he is placed to his knees. And what we now know, just 3 days later, is that the first shot was a shot to his back. Alex Preddy, a legal observer, an ICU nurse at a veterans hospital, was shot in the back. This was not a defensive move by those Border Patrol agents. And a doctor later reported that when he observed and tried to render aid to Alex Preddy, that instead of providing CPR or attempting to revive him, although by now we all know because you've probably seen the video, it was too late. But the doctor said in a sworn statement that it appeared that the CBP agents were counting the bullet holes in Alex's body, like some kind of bizarre and sick trophy. This is America. This is what I'm talking about. Federal agents, unaccountable masked men, counting the bullet holes of the body of someone exercising his First Amendment right and his Second Amendment right. Picking up the phone. Hey, do you want to go grab pizza tonight? Alex was declared dead at the scene, but within hours of the shooting, here's what we heard from the federal government. You have Kristi Noem saying that Preddy arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. You have Greg Bovino saying Preddy planned to, quote, massacre federal agents. You have Stephen Miller calling him a would-be assassin. Then you have FBI Director Kash Patel. No one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm. A DHS agent said agents fired defensive shots because Preddy approached U.S. Border Patrol with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and, quote, attacked officers. I can't understate how important it is that we recognize that this is gaslighting. Okay? People very loosely use the term gaslighting. They apply gaslighting to all sorts of behaviors, which are factually forms of abuse. But I, in my lifetime, have not seen a more factual, accurate definition of gaslighting than the federal government saying the things that they have said when we so clearly have seen what happened in that incident. That is gaslighting. That is abuse. And it's happening at the hands of your federal government. This is very dangerous. This is a dangerous erosion of stability. It's not the only one. Let's get on to our next story. Good morning, everyone. It's very good to have you here on the show. I want to quickly shout out for our live shows, our moderators who take care of the space. This one's even worse. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but while Minneapolis was, of course, still reeling from the death of Alex Preddy, a story came out of Colorado that should really make you nervous. It shows the mentality of these federal agents, the ones that are conducting these operations. These people are sick in the head. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but in Eagle County near Vail, ICE agents detained at least 9 people during what advocacy groups are calling, quote, fake traffic stops. When family members went to retrieve the abandoned vehicles, they found something inside of the car. They found Ace of Spades playing cards. And they weren't just any cards, by the way. They were printed with the ICE Denver field office contact information and the address for the GEO Immigration Detention Facility in Aurora, Colorado. They had gone to the effort of having these cards printed. Now, let's talk about historical context. These people understand what they were doing. During the Vietnam War, U.S. military psychological operations used Ace of Spades cards as instruments of terror. Company C, 2nd Battalion, 35th Infantry, would leave them on the bodies of killed Viet Cong at village entrances and exits along trails. The goal here was obviously psychological warfare and to send a message. That's what these cards are. They're not information. They're not a calling card. They're not a business card. They're not a courtesy. They are designed to inflict psychological warfare on these people, these families, and these relatives. This is a racist symbol. It is an abuse of power, and it has no place. ICE and DHS are claiming that they are investigating this. That is, quote, unauthorized conduct. Even if we take their word, which I do not take ICE at their word at any point now after what we just talked about, this means that you have feds in the field conducting psychological warfare without authorization. That is not better. That is arguably worse. Bovino, Noam, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, the president, this agency is out of control. And it's really quite simple. It's because there's no leadership. The leadership's not coming from the president. The president actually distanced himself from the agent that killed Alex Preddy. By the way, let's connect this back to Minneapolis. Both of these stories show us one thing. Federal agents with complete disregard for the law, claiming, by the way, to be acting on law enforcement, clearly disregarding human dignity. Which brings us to the FBI director, Kash Patel. Kash Patel was on Fox News Sunday morning with Maria Bartiromo, and this was the day after Alex was killed. He said something that was really quite blatantly false, but also caused a lot of ire in the Republican Party as well. Here's a quote from Patel. "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have the right to break the law." Well, Minnesota gun owners disagree. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus responded, "This is completely incorrect on Minnesota law. There is no prohibition on a permit holder carrying a firearm loaded with multiple magazines at a protest or a rally in Minnesota." The NRA, by the way, was more pointed. This sentiment from the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California is dangerous and wrong. They're actually responding to a different quote from that person. "The Second Amendment protects Americans' right to bear arms while protesting, a right the federal government must not infringe upon." That was from Gun Owners of America. So let us think about the irony, though, for a minute. The FBI director, supposedly the nation's top law enforcement official, went on national television and made a false claim about guns to justify the killing of a legally armed American citizen. These are the same officials who bent over backwards to defend little Mr. Piggy, Kyle Rittenhouse, and his assassination when he went to Kenosha with his AR-15. But a 37-year-old who legally carries a firearm, holstered firearm, by the way, oh, he's a domestic terrorist with a plan to massacre. This is what I've been saying all along and what many people have been saying all along. They never wanted everyone to have rights. They only want the right to have rights. It's not about gun policy. This is about selective enforcement, but worse, it's about destroying and eroding your rights. And this comes on the heels, by the way, of increasing sentiment across the country of both abolishing ICE, but also about gun ownership. A lot of people of all stripes in this country are now starting to understand that all of their rights are at risk, whether that is your First Amendment right, your right to protest, the Fourth Amendment right, the government infringing with unwarranted, unauthorized searches. ICE, by the way, saying that they can enter your home apparently without a judicial warrant, or whether it is increasingly people I'm now seeing who said I would never own a gun, who are now afraid of their government. When you've lost gun rights activists and your president is a Republican and the Congress is Republican and the Supreme Court is, I don't know what you'd call the Supreme Court at this point, a rubber stamp, you've crossed a line. No one is defending this. Speaking of not defending something, welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. I do want to ask you to please consider following us on all of our platforms. You're going to see us posting more over on Substack. The link there is in the bio. We're going to continue to stream on TikTok, obviously, because it's important that we reach people. But we are now streaming live over on YouTube and on Twitch. Let's see if we can catch up with some comments. How's everybody doing, by the way? It's good to have you. Welcome to the show. Looks like we're good. Oh, looks like we got some people. We got some people subscribing over on Substack. I do appreciate that. Do we have some chats to check in? This is where I need my mods over on all the platforms. We are looking for moderators on YouTube and Twitch, by the way. The team can only do so much. What do we got? We got Abolish ICE over here on YouTube, over on Substack. What else? We got some checking in on some comments. Got a lot of people talking about this. A lot of that sentiment. The hypocrisy is astounding. Got someone volunteering to moderate on YouTube. I appreciate that. I really do. I'll find you on Substack. All right. See, we're doing great. Let's continue on to the next story. I do want to mention before I do that this show is brought to you by Ignite. I guess it's not anymore, but I'll talk about that in a second. Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. It's our signature podcast. If you're looking to how you can fight, how you can push back against this wave of Christian nationalist fascism, well, we've built a guide for you. It's totally free. It's called Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. With 14 episodes and 4 bonus episodes, we teach you the basic things, like how to become the first follower, how to reach out to your elected officials, how to run for office, or how to fix the pothole in your neighborhood. Go download all 14 episodes of Ignite on Spotify, 4 bonus episodes as well. It is available also on YouTube. It's available also on, what's the other one? Apple Podcasts. And it's something we're very proud of. So thanks to everyone on Rebel Radio, by the way, who helped to build that. Season 2 continues. Anyways, let's go to, I was talking about not defending, right? People are not defending Kash Patel. You probably know I'm from Las Vegas. I see some people here who are from Nevada over there, which I appreciate. On Saturday, and I'm talking about this because I want you to see how you can do this in your own community. On Saturday, Senator Jackie Rosen, a quote moderate Democrat who helped Republicans end the 43-day government shutdown, released a statement calling for the impeachment of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Let me read you the part. Kristi Noem has been an abject failure leading the Department of Homeland Security for the last year, blah, 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 blah. She's either too incompetent to rein in the agency under her purview. Guys, I'm running behind today. Or she endorses the blatant constitutional violations being committed. Blah, blah, blah. She goes on to say, then she's calling for DHS Secretary to resign or to be impeached. Let's see if anyone else has joined this call. Nevada's other senator, Catherine Cortez Fetterman Masto, said DHS is, quote, brutalizing U.S. citizens and law-abiding immigrants. And she's calling for Kristi Noem to resign. Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen are not moderate Democrats. They are moderate agents of complicity. To wait until a man is murdered on American streets, to wait until your citizens are begging you for help. I guess my challenge, Go look at either of their social medias. Look at Masto's threads or Jackie Rosen's threads. They'll post some pre-scheduled tweet and you'll see thousands of comments from people in Nevada. Please do something more. Please, we're begging you to do something more. And I think finally the rumble of our activism, the rumble of our voices, the fear in the voices of her constituents, finally, I think some of that has broken through. But asking Kristi Noem to resign, that is not even the beginning of a starting point. Kristi Noem, of course, should never have her position. Let us not forget that Kristi Noem was nominated and then voted in by the Senate to have her role. Now I'm curious. Let's find out. Did Jackie Rosen vote for Kristi Noem? Let's look it up for Kristi. Does anyone want to place a wager? Let's find out if CCM did. Not interested. The Senate voted 59-34 to confirm Kristi Noem. Well, to Catherine Cortez Masto's place, she did vote against it. I can't find Jackie Rosen's vote. The point being, to now wait until all of this terror has been inflicted on our streets to call for the very bare minimum is, I think, disgusting. Let us not forget that Rosen and Cortez Masto, and likely your senator as well, voted for this last round of funding. Let us not forget that the government was shut down and that they voted to reopen the government without, by the way, protecting your health care. With, by the way, increasing funding for ICE. And whenever people say, oh, what can the Democrats do? They don't have any power. Well, they voted to reopen the government. And 7 Democrats voted to continue funding ICE, actually to increase funding for ICE. And I think there's one thing that's quite certain. If those 7 Democrats had voted no, it would have shut down additional funding for ICE. There would have been a forced national conversation about what next to do with this agency of rogue law enforcement officers. And it's possible that with that conversation, along with the largest economic boycott in history in Minnesota and the largest single day of protest in the history of Minnesota, perhaps if those 7 Democrats had had any courage, perhaps Alex Preddy would not be dead today. I think it's likely. Why? Because finally there would have been a recognition that enough is enough. And I think Jackie Rosen, Catherine Cortez Masto, your senators, having Cory Booker say, oh, we need to have better training for ICE agents. Jonathan Ross, the agent who killed Renee Good, was a firearms instructor for 10 years. You can't train this. Have you ever had a basket of fruit? An orange? Have you ever had a moldy orange or a rotten orange? When you have one rotten orange in a bunch of oranges, what happens? In a day, they all get rotten. This cancer has spread throughout ICE, throughout DHS, throughout the FBI now. I don't know how we even begin to start to have reputable law enforcement in the United States of America. The president of the United States is out pardoning every convicted criminal, every huge white collar criminal literally in the playbook. You have elected officials who committed horrible crimes like Michelle Fiore, who stole money from people, lying to them, saying she was going to build a statue for 2 dead cops. And she stole their money, used it for plastic surgery. She gets tried by a jury of her peers, sentenced in federal court to 7 felonies for using dead cop money to buy her plastic surgery and pay for her daughter's wedding. This is like if this was a movie, you would say, I want my money back. And she gets pardoned. The Nikola guy from Utah makes this electric semi company. It's a complete fraud. He has this semi that they want to tell everybody that, oh, we made the first electric semi. They take it to the top of a hill and they roll it down the hill with gravity and they say, oh, look, it works. Billions of dollars of fraud. He gets out of jail. Doesn't have to pay back a single penny. The president of the United States. Billions of dollars in his secret crypto slush fund, a plane from Qatar. How do you begin to have any semblance of law enforcement or law or just or constitution in this country after all of this? It doesn't come from a senator, a coward, by the way, who just now says, oh, well, I think Kristi Noem's got to go. It's disgraceful. So how did I actually have one more story. It's been a longer show, but I got to wrap it up. I want to talk about Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes. She's caused a lot of scandal with her summons. So Kris Mayes is the Attorney General in Colorado. Mayes was asked about Arizona's Stand Your Ground law in the context of masked, unidentified ICE agents conducting operations. Her response was very straightforward. Under Arizona law, if someone breaks into your home and you reasonably believe your life is in danger, you can use lethal force to defend yourself. The law has an exception for identified law enforcement officers acting in their official capacity. Then she said, it's kind of a recipe for disaster because you have these masked federal officers with very little identification, sometimes no identification, wearing plain clothes and masks. We have a stand your ground law that says if you reasonably believe that your life is in danger and you're in your house or your car, you're on your property, that you can defend yourself. Now she's getting into all kinds of shit because people are saying she's inciting this, but she's just talking about the objective truth. She's not advocating for violence. When the interview asked if she was telling people to shoot ICE agents, she said, absolutely not. But if you're being attacked by someone who is not identified as a peace officer, how do you know? By the way, I'm a gun owner, she says. If somebody comes at me wearing a mask and I can't tell whether they're a police officer, what am I supposed to do? And that is the question. That is not advocating for violence. She's asking the question that every reasonable American is asking right now. How do I know if this person threatening to abduct me or my neighbor, terrorizing my neighborhood or my community, how am I supposed to know? What am I supposed to do? And the answer from the federal government seems to be, well, you're supposed to die. Real cops don't wear masks. Of course, the people screaming at her are the same people who have defended stand your ground laws for decades. The problem is not stand your ground laws. The problem is not that she's advocating for violence. And let me be clear, I am also not advocating for violence. The problem is federal agents operating in a way that makes them indistinguishable from criminals, leaving ace of spades cards in people's car to terrorize them, that the agency that itself says is unauthorized. Well, if you have agents operating in unauthorized ways, what is that? It's not law enforcement. And of course, so that someone doesn't clip this, no one is saying we're advocating for violence here. But Arizona's Attorney General has a reasonable question. And the reasonable question is, what are we supposed to do? And our senator's answer is apparently, by the way, our senator's answer is, oh, well, what we're supposed to do is write a strongly worded letter asking Kristi Noem politely to resign. We're on our own, folks. Let's bring it together. They're not separate stories. They're different angles on the same fundamental conversation. You have federal agents killing American citizens, then lying about, the justification. You have federal agents conducting psychological warfare against immigrant communities. You have the FBI director publicly lying about your rights. You have a quote, moderate cabinet secretary calling for Kristi Noem's impeachment. And you have an attorney general in the state of Arizona warning that this is all out of control. This is the anatomy of a democracy in collapse. in real time. In fascism, there is no law. There's just the use of state violence. There's no check on the power. I ask you, what check is on the power of this violence? There's none. It's not incompetence, it's unnecessary confidence. It's the confidence of these people thinking that they will never face consequences. It's the consequence from these people believing that your supporters will believe anything you say. If your government can shoot a man on camera and then tell you he was the aggressor while you watched him be executed on your phone, and a significant portion, by the way, of the country believes that, you are not, this is not a policy discussion. You are dealing with the active destruction of shared reality. A government that lies about killing its own citizen is a government that will lie about anything. An enforcement agency that conducts psychological warfare on civilians sees civilians as the enemy. And a political movement that demands absolute loyalty over reality and the law, that is incompatible with democracy. None of what I just said is hyperbole. It's the reality of the news on the ground. This is the Ignition News, everyone. It is January 26th, 2026, 1/26/26. Let me close it out with the following. On Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise, we talk about the White Rose Society. Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, a group of German students who distributed flyers across college campuses decrying the acts of the Nazi regime. For the act of handing out flyers, she was executed. She was hanged. We are not at that point in the United States of America where passing out a flyer against the government can have you hanged, but we are not so many steps away as you might believe. It's time for you to understand and use your rights. It's time for you to wake up and to wake your neighbors up as well. We live in an era where the state can inflict almost immeasurable violence on you, but you don't have the option of exercising that violence back. I've told you before, and I'll tell you again. You can't fight fascism from jail, and you definitely can't fight it if you're dead on the street. We have to exercise and use every tool at our disposal to push back. But most importantly, we have to wake our neighbors up. The vast majority of your friends and family are sleeping through this ascendance into fascism. That's why we do the Ignition News. That's why we're here every day with the truth. When the government is willing to lie to you, you've got to know where to go to find the truth. And I hope that's here. I hope that's on the Ignition News. Thank you very much, everybody. That's our show today for January 26th.